Planning board members, I've got 7 o'clock on the dot, so if it's all right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I do want to inform you guys that we do have unanimous attendance tonight, so we have more than a quorum to engage in the agenda items. First item on the agenda, of course, is the election of chair, which I will manage the process of. After we elect a chair, I'll turn the remainder of the meeting over for the election of the vice chair and then the remainder of the items on the agenda. So having said that, I will now open the floor for nominations for chair of the planning board.
May I have the floor? I would like to nominate Rodney Cheek for the chair.
I'll second. Second, a third, and a fourth. Yeah.
Rodney Cheek has been nominated and seconded. Are there any other candidates for chairman of the planning board? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Well, with no other candidates, then Mr. Cheek is made chair.
Are you going to accept that position if we ask?
You want me to?
Yes, sir. That's why we said you.
It's gonna make you happy, I'll do it.
All in favor, aye. Move nomination be closed.
Yeah, well, if there's no other candidates, then I believe that he would just be made chair by acclamation, but we can certainly take a vote. Either way is fine. Yeah. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Now's my chance.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So it's 9-1.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yes, sir.
The floor is now open for vice chair nomination.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Lee Isley for the vice chair position.
Second.
So we got a nomination, a second. Any others? All in favor, Lee Isley? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Now,
Now you can. Okay.
You move on up there then. Yeah. Come cold spot.
Now the truth comes out. Now you got the role. Everybody's here.
Yes, sir.
You said that. Okay. Just making sure I was listening. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes from the November 9th regular meeting? The motion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? November 9th meeting minutes approved. Now, we had a special meeting on the 30th. Has everybody had a chance to read those minutes? Questions?
To approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Did anybody sign up to speak tonight?
Yes, sir. We have no public.
Okay, no public comments. So there's no responses to that. All right, now, has everybody had a chance to see the proposed calendar for next year?
That's a typo. It should say 2024.
Oh,
Well, if we were to fix that, then that would be,
as amended.
yeah. Okay, did you want to speak? You? Okay, I just want to make sure.
I don't want to talk about the calendar.
Well, what it is like we've been doing the second Thursday of the month, and that goes through January of next year so that we can get that started off. So is everybody good with the calendar?
You need a motion to accept it.
We do.
Well, I move we accept the calendar as with the correction to 2024, but as written.
Okay. Second. Got a motion and a second on the calendar. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're down to the UDO. You want to talk about the clarifying article?
Yes,
one?
sir. I'd be glad to.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Board members, included in tonight's agenda packet are some proposed text amendments to Article 1 of the UDO. As I have discussed with several of you over the past few months, I believe that our UDO lacks clarity, which would otherwise be useful not only to planning staff, but to the planning board, to county residents and developers alike. For example, there's not even a definition of subdivision in our ordinance. Beginning with this meeting, and that's just one example.
Interesting.
Beginning with this meeting, I would like to bring each section of the UDO before you, before the board, one at a time for consideration and debate. I want to stress that the goal is not to have the planning board take action on any of this immediately and accept the changes anytime soon. Rather, I would like you to simply begin reviewing them now, and as the months go by, to consider each section of the UDO for this type of update and clarification. Ideally, this review process will culminate with one motion and vote to adopt all appropriate and approved UDO changes, which would then be presented to the county commissioners for final consideration. This process could easily last a year or more. The proposed changes before you follow the same format standard of underlining for new text and a strike through for old text, similar legal format for any type of amendment. Please allow me to briefly summarize the proposed changes in each section, and after that, I will gladly answer any questions that you might have or discuss any of it in further detail. So if you have this copy in front of you, I'll just go through these items, the sections one at a time. Sections 1.1 and 1.2, there is no change. Section 1.3, this will clarify that the ordinance does not supersede existing restrictive covenants and that development approvals run with the land and new developments must be in compliance with the ordinance. Section 1.4 adds legal justification for the Historic Properties Commission. Sections 1.5 to 1.6, no change. Section 1.7 allows for flexibility in whether or not proposals are consistent with any adopted comprehensive plans. Section 1.8 creates a formal process by which the UDO may be amended in the future. Section 1.9 would define the responsibilities and authority of the planning director and planning staff. And also adds a section about the computation of time as it relates to mailed notices, actions related to development approvals, and public hearings. Sections 1.10, 11, and 12, no change. Section 1.13 would create a process by which planning related fees are established and collected. So I know obviously there's a lot more detail in here. That's just kind of a summary. And again, I'm happy to answer any more questions you guys might have about it.
Question.
Yes, sir.
All the underlined text, is this new text that's written?
Yeah, it would be new. And again, I just want to stress that this is a draft. I want you guys to read into it, debate it, ask questions, talk amongst yourselves. Take it any kind of way you want.
The run with the land part that's stricken out, that was taken out for what reason again?
Well, yeah, that section, in reading through it, it just didn't grammatically make sense. So if you look at NC General Statute 160D-104, it's very brief and it just said development approvals run with the land. From a legal perspective, what that's saying is if we make an approval on any kind of a new development, it doesn't attach to the individual that sought the permit, it attaches to the property. So it kind of conflated a protection of covenants with development approvals running with the land. So it really just kind of broke it apart to make it a little bit more clear. And that's also why I have the statutory reference for 160D-104 right there next to it.
Yes, I got a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
The other day when you sent to me. So what prompted this action or thought of action? Because we've kind of got the dead horse on this whole thing with 13 members and 9 members, and it was thought of as a discussion upcoming, and we kind of got blindsided a little bit by that, where it was a little bit more than a discussion. It was something that was already going to go through an approval
Sure,
process. Okay, so initially that was my first gut reaction. Okay, all right, let's stop. Talk about this. What prompted this discussion?
So this is an initiative of my doing. With regards to the Board of Adjustment change, that was initiated by the county commissioners. So the board, in looking at this, may say, this is all a bunch of junk and we're not interested. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And since I've been here now for the past 3 months, there have just been several instances where the ordinance really isn't clear and doesn't give us, I think, the type of clear guidance that we would like in order to make, really make, I don't want to say easy decisions, but just have good legal standing and make clear decisions. So for example, not having a definition of actually what a subdivision is. Even in addition to that, in the subdivision ordinance, there is no parameters for lot sizes within cluster subdivision. It talks about a cluster subdivision, but it doesn't give us the guidance on, how do we allocate open space and lot size and those types of things that you often see with the legal language, the regulatory language around a cluster subdivision. The watershed ordinance talks about watershed variances, but it doesn't clearly establish the board that might approve watershed variances. I'm sure, Ian and I have talked about just countless examples. So if we're going to begin this process, the place to start is at the beginning, right, with Article 1. Article 1 is really just kind of any ordinance that you view, whether it's ours or in other counties, it's just kind of your boilerplate legal language that sets the framework for the county having the authority to do so, the role of the staff, planning board, county commissioners, that type of thing. So it's really just, again, it's a broad effort to eventually tackle the entire UDO, but for the sake of expediency and taking on manageable chunks, just starting with Article 1 now.
So basically, you reviewed, looked at, saw some discrepancies or some more clarification could be added, and this is all on some.
That's right,
experience
yeah.
from-
That's right. Yeah, what I think happened, so you guys may remember a few years ago, 160D was enacted on the state level, and all local jurisdictions in the state of North Carolina had to recodify to be in line with 160D. I think more or less what happened was, Alamance County had dozens of ordinances and they kind of just got pushed together, as opposed to really going through and making sure that a reference in Article 2 lines up with a reference in Article 6, or that it's really a truly uniform document. So my goal with all this is to, at the end of the process, we'll truly have a uniform document that's legally sound, gives good guidance to staff, is something that the average citizen can open up and understand, and just overall just a better, more sound document. So I'm really glad you asked that question.
Anybody else got questions?
So again, I don't want you to take any action on this. Taking any action is going to start that whole process and get the county commissioners to review and all that good stuff. And again, this is more or less just a draft. So if you want to think about it, bring things back to the next meeting. Again, ask me any questions now. If you see anything that might need to be in there that's not, then it's a completely wide open discussion. But I do want to, have a steady process here, bring up Article 2 next, Article 3 after that, and just kind of move us on down the line.
Okay. One question I have.
Yes, sir.
So for instance, like the proposed changes and edits here for Article 1. Say February, we come back, have a discussion. Hey, we like this change. We don't like this one, or we want to tweak this here. Will that set of, once we agree on that month of changes, will that be tabled? And then we go to Article 2, continue that for the rest of the year, and then they would all be sent to the commissioners at the end of the year? Or it's like, okay, if we agree on all the stuff for Article 1, is that going to be sent to commissioners? In February or March, Article 2 would be sent to commissioners. Like, how will that process work?
Yeah, I think ideally it's everything all
Yeah.
at once.
Okay.
So the final package.
And that makes sense.
The
I just
final
didn't know.
package presented to the commissioners
Yeah.
is basically, hypothetically, we can say, let's imagine it's April 2025.
Yeah.
And we say, county commissioners, the planning board has taken a year or more to really
Got it.
review all these and
Yep.
have debate and go through
Yep.
each article one by one. And now here's a whole buffet of proposed amendments for you guys to consider.
Okay.
And I guess is there some flexibility just in case something comes up during the year? Like as an example, last year we had a few things that we had to make text amendments based on discussions we had here that we had to, get sent before certain deadlines. Is that flexibility still allowed? So if you see something that need to be amended in, a later section, that we can actually address that because of the time. instead
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
waiting?
Yeah, if there's some, let's say there's some sort of a really big issue that comes up related to the high impact development portion of the ordinance. We could jump immediately to that, go through the whole amendment process, have planning board review and consideration, get it up to the commissioners, and then they do their public hearing for final adoption. Yeah, that's always on the table.
It did, but I didn't want us to have to wait until probably next year by the time we get through the whole document.
Could be. If you want to move faster, we can.
How many
But,
articles total are there?
there are technically 8 articles of the UDO. Article 5 is technically reserved for hypothetical snow camp zoning. So it's literally nothing.
That's an ad hoc thing.
Article 7 is just definitions. Article 8 is your appendices with like an example of a homeowners association agreement or a road maintenance agreement, something like that. So in reality, there are really 5 articles of the UDO that are the policy. But Article 6 is broken up into 14 parts. So my thought there is we'll do Article 6, parts 1 and part 2
Got it.
for one meeting, and then 3 and 4, and then just kind of break Article 6 up into manageable chunks that way.
So if this, in this change that we're proposing here and all, is this gonna entail the land that y'all been talking about, the size of land? Will this be in this, and will we incorporate this into this change in this?
Well, ultimately, that's up to the board. So as we're working through this, if you guys want to direct us as staff to make really substantial policy changes, then we certainly can. The process is still going to be the same. So you guys would have to approve it, make a recommendation to the county commissioners, and then the county commissioners would have to have a public hearing and then ultimately adopt it. So my thought is just going in and trying to clarify, add the legal language, add some regulatory clarity. But if you guys want to get into actually really getting into policy changes, then that's certainly on the table.
Well, I don't know, it just seems like to me if we were going to tackle this thing and go through this whole thing and do the changes, and if we could get everything formulated and done that we feel like needs to be addressed and present this all at one time to the commissioners instead of doing partial of it and then come back 6 months or 7 months, say we want to change. We'd like to recommend the change. I ain't saying we want to change.
Right.
And I know there's been discussions about the lot size. And my feelings that on subdivisions, we are way behind. We should have had ordinances on subdivisions and what standards and everything it should be done. Because we got subdivisions going on all around me, and they ain't nothing. These people down the road, 10 or 15 years, are going to be in trouble. So I'm just throwing that out. I just wanted to know if it's something as we go along, as we need to tackle the whole thing instead of just breaking it up parts, and that's making words.
The answer to your question is potential.
Right.
Yes. So that right there is right. 1.8 A1.
Yes, sir.
Is that supposed to say planning board or board of commissioners?
I would say it.
What you say again?
Yes. That is supposed to say
1.8.
1.8.
Uh-huh. A1.
Or, that's correct. Yep.
It could have been another change.
That's a new board
A
coming up.
new board coming up.
I love that.
Good eye. It's a good catch.
Well, see, the spell check didn't know.
No, it's a good word.
Because of was spelled correctly, so it.
Yeah, that's certainly one thing too. I'm actually glad that you pointed that out. And that's something that I've talked with my colleagues about, is even some grammatical errors. There are sentences that don't have periods at the end. There are in the portion about setbacks, it says 20 apostrophe feet. So it technically says 20 feet. You know, it references, I was actually looking through the cell tower portion earlier, and it says, you know, unless as designed in section 14 above. Well, there's no section 14. Section 14 was a part of the old ordinance. So yeah, misspellings, punctuation, duplicative language of instead of or, anything like that. And I would like to have that addressed as well. Obviously, we'll try to catch that before we present it to you guys, but if you catch it, you just flag it for us.
So when will we approve these sections if we're gonna present this all to them all at one time? Are we gonna save all this up ourselves till one big grandiose planning board meeting
So
that we,
I think that's probably the better plan. Because that way then the commissioners get everything as a package. You know, they are required to have a public hearing before they amend the ordinance. So just for the sake of, it's kind of a clean process. I think it's better for them to get everything as one package they can review at the same time, have one public hearing, and then kind of look at it in its totality, as opposed to submit to them. We would be hypothetically submitting to them a dozen or more public hearings.
right, I
You mean
understand.
as far as tracking?
I mean, I
Our
understand that,
internal
but
approval,
be like
essentially.
our approval to the parts.
Yeah.
Are we gonna save those up till we get all of them read at one time?
Yeah, so in terms of changes and yes, actual approval, I think there should be one vote at the end of the process
Okay.
For, per each section.
for everything together.
Just
So
one vote, one
so
time.
it would be,
Okay.
maybe the motion would hypothetically be, I make a motion to approve all, you know, changes for Articles 1 through 8 as debated or as presented. All in favor, yes, no, all the rest. I mean, as we work through these, we'll bank it all together as one new document and present that in its totality.
We can work through each article and approve it amongst ourselves that we are good with section 1 through 138 or whatever. If we go through and just make it as a worksheet,
Mhm.
would that be?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I think that
worksheet and a worksheet approval. So if we get down the road and deeper in this thing and we feel like something up here, we can go back and revisit.
That's right. We need to have some kind of
As a
ongoing
worksheet.
tracker, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Once we get to the end of it, then everything's all satisfied and everything, then, like you said, you know, we can vote on it all as one package.
Right.
That way.
Absolutely.
And having a consensus where everybody's in agreement,
Yes.
but not actually making a motion the second,
That's right.
voting on it.
Maybe our attorney can kind of help us with the procedure of it.
Yeah,
I
that's
would
kind of what I
say,
was really asking.
I would say if a vote to table would be appropriate, then maybe that's the route to go. But I think you just kind of want to leave it as an open document that can be amended. I mean, we could get to September and then all of a sudden it dawns on us, oh, we need to change this in Article 1, you know?
Well, I can answer about that. But if you're gonna table something, you've got to have a motion and a second, because you can't just table an idea.
Like Henry said, though, this is gonna kind of be like a worksheet till we
Yeah.
get done. Right?
Exactly.
We'll work on Article 1, and when we get to where we think, okay, yeah, this is what we're gonna present to them at the end.
Well, here's the question.
Yeah.
Is there a rule that says we've got to submit to the commissioners at a point? Or do we have the discretion as to when we send them stuff?
I would say you have the discretion, but I would also say that as soon as you officially approve, that sets wheels in motions for something that goes on their agenda that they then can't avoid.
Okay,
So if you approve amendments to the UDO, then they must follow that up with a public hearing and to consider adopting those changes to the UDO.
so Henry's thought about having a worksheet or a kind of a consensus amongst the group and then moving along.
Yeah, like a
With
pre-approval.
With the understanding that we can come back if need be,
Yeah.
without actually making that motion.
That's
Once
right.
we get our final document,
That's right.
then we
Okay.
can have a vote. You
On
know,
everything at once.
Absolutely.
Send this on to
Okay.
the commissioners.
My practical advice here is that the fewer changes you make at a time, the more scrutiny you invite as to those individual changes. if you are presenting to the board what we consider to be a cleanup of various issues, a number of issues, none of which substantially affects the way we're doing business, it's less likely you're going to get as much scrutiny about the things that you're purporting to change. If you send up 2 or 3 changes at a time, you're going to get a lot of feedback about what those changes might be.
Right.
So depending on the magnitude of changes you're making, that may be warranted. But if you're not making substantive changes, I would think maybe it's better to kind of put more things in the basket rather than fewer.
Okay.
So how does the existing, we have an existing subcommittee on
Lot size.
lot size of the subdivision. That, how is that gonna, the old business gonna continue as it is in conjunction with or alongside, or does that still take precedence and we worked on this together, but that section will come up sooner than we work through all these things.
We would certainly hope so.
Right, I mean, that's right, so I'm still gonna make that one of the priorities.
Well, it needs to be,
Chair.
it needs to be addressed.
Well, the subcommittee, if I remember correctly, the motion that created the subcommittee requested some sort of a report or recommendation or message back to the board for the February meeting.
Correct.
So hypothetically, that's going to be on the next agenda. The subdivision ordinance portion of the UDO is Article 6.9. So if we're really expedient, we're going to do Article 2 at the next meeting, right? So the recommendation from the subcommittee is certainly going to come well before we get to the subdivision portion of the ordinance.
If not, we just slow up right there, but we just add on lot sizes and then
But I just think in terms of procedure, you guys can request staff make changes. You can take it home with you and chew on it for a month. Bring, recommend additional changes to Article 1 at the February meeting. Obviously, we'll have Article 2 there at that meeting as well. We can go ahead and crack into Article 2. I don't think there's any required method that you have to take to work through the changes. Other than if you vote, then that just starts the whole process in motion. If you actually take a definitive vote. Yeah. So it's more of just a floating open-ended discussion item until we get to the end of the process and you guys feel comfortable with it.
I got no problem with that.
I got one question back to what Vaughn was saying. Now, all the underlying stuff is new.
That's
or
correct.
changed.
That's, yes, sir.
Is it new?
It would be, yeah,
I
if
mean,
enacted
Is some of this existing?
under section 1.8.
Yeah, like any section of, any one of them.
Any of the underlying text is
Yeah.
all brand new
It
text.
would be all
new,
new.
or is it partially new and added to, or which
Yeah.
way is that?
Anything that's underlined would be new text. Anything that has a strike through would be old text. And so specifically on 1.8, again, this is something where I saw it, I see it as a UDO administrator and I go, my gosh, there's nothing here. But if you were to take all that text underline and strike through out of there, 1.8 simply says reserved for amendment procedures. And that's it. There's no actual amendment procedure in 1.8.
So it's just a
That's
placeholder
It's
section.
just a.
It was just a
placeholder.
placeholder. So this
That's
would be
what I'm
new,
trying to-
new
yeah,
policy.
Yeah, it's just simply a placeholder.
I guess that's what I was trying to.
Now,
say,
state
what
law,
is-
now,
What is
state law,
the existing, what is the existing language and what you're saying? The ones that are strike, that's the existing language and that's all that was there and everything else is in here has been added.
yes, sir, that's correct.
So 1.8 had zero text.
That's exactly
Before.
right. The entirety of section 1.8 simply had a heading that said reserved for amendment procedures and no actual text.
Excellent.
Got reserved for.
I guess it was.
It was reserved. Thank goodness they reserved it.
For me. That's right. I feel
Page
honored.
intentionally left blank.
Right.
I feel honored. Right.
Yes.
So looking at the UDO as a whole, obviously this first portion probably could have been combined with number 2. Some of it's just framework, more so than meat. Like number 7 shouldn't be a huge discussion You know, is there any of that that can be combined into 1 month? Because 6 is huge.
Yeah. Maybe, it depends on the pace at which you guys want to address it. My thought was just to go one article at a time.
Well,
And
6
just-
shouldn't be one meeting.
No, 6 definitely should not. Like I said, when we get to 6, I envision maybe 6,
Part one.
part 1 and part 2, and that's it.
So like you said, there's nothing in 5.
Correct. And then
7 is
7 is definitions. Now,
definitions.
I think there's some definitions we should add or amend.
Right, but it's, what I'm getting at is it's not,
It'll take that long.
it's not gonna take that long.
Correct, yeah.
It's not gonna.
You're really talking,
Opportunity for discussion.
Yeah. for lack of a better term, Article 6 is where the action is. That's the policy.
Exactly.
That's the subdivisions, watershed, flood zone. That's the meat. That's the real centerpiece. Yeah.
Can you, get us, or I would like, I don't know, but can you get me a hard copy of the UDO?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I like a piece of paper rather than that, I know y'all use that. If I got a piece of
I like it
paper,
when you look at it.
Blow it up so you don't have to.
I like a piece of paper where I can make my mark.
Do you think we can realistically go through this thing in a year?
Possibly.
You think it probably more like 15, 16 months?
I haven't done the specific math, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you jump to 6. 6 has, like I said, 14 sections. So that's 7 meetings. Hypothetically, if you break it up into 2 each, so that's 11 months. Then you got 7 and 8. So if you're talking them one at a time, you're talking about 13 months. If I got the math right in my head.
Okay.
I just wonder if you can do like 2, 3, and 4 over 2 meetings.
We can do whatever you guys
Split
want.
3,
Yeah, we can do whatever
part
you
3
guys
with 2,
want.
and part
Kind of
one.
balancing out the workload.
Well, and I guess
Balancing
it
out the
also,
workload.
That's
it,
what I'm getting
Yeah.
at.
Six may
Yeah.
take some time once we get in there too.
it depends on the amount of changes that you've got proposed too.
Mhm.
If they're wordy and long, it's,
Changes if you want.
No, we've got kind of a rolling document where if we catch something, we add it as a note and then go back and actually just kind of address it later. The only
That's kind
thing,
of What we're gonna have here is just a rolling document.
That's right,
till We
yeah.
get the.
the only thing that's really,
How long we gonna stay? How long-
Yep, the only
how long
thing
we
that
gonna
is-
Stay here too.
the only thing that's more or less changed is Article 1 that you have before you.
We gonna stay till 1 morning.
I mean, if you could grab any of 3 and go with 2, I think that might.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do that.
General standard for applications and review. I'm sure there's some. If there's 5 sections of 30. That's just my thing.
So being able to take this home, read over it, stew on it, mark it up, come back February, have a discussion, a read, learned discussion about 1. Pass out 2, talk about it like we done, and keep them working a month ahead, so you're not getting blindsided with it. Does that seem like a doable plan? And as you're pulling the stuff out, you see about how much material we're going, and if it goes from here to here, it don't have to be exactly.
Yeah.
We kind of got a consensus on that.
yes.
Yeah, and if y'all want, I'm happy to do Articles 2 and 3 for the next meeting.
And I say 2 and 3, but do you have to do 2 and 3? Could you do 2 and 4? What makes more sense? Do you want to go through?
Yeah, I just worry if we don't go sequentially, something's gonna get tangled up.
Okay.
I think just going sequentially makes sense.
But how much, I guess, how much can you get done? Because if you do 2, 3, and 4, it doesn't mean we have to do 2, 3, and 4 all at one time, but if we got the information that you're recommended, that gives us time to look over it and look at it and just, in our minds, what we think.
Well, if IT will shut off my phone and email, I just go do it all in the next week. I'm a real stickler for this stuff.
Well, I mean, whatever would, I think would suit you this to, the sooner we can get the information to start looking over, the better, informed we can get. I think, which don't mean we have to do them all each time, but you got them in, and you got some extra time at home during that month, you know, you can cruise through it.
Sometimes I have to read things 2 or 3 times to understand it too.
I'm with you.
Like I said, you had, you know, once you get them like you think you want, you email them to me. Mine to me anyway, I can go and start reading over it. Even if we ain't doing but one or so at a time.
Sure.
If I've got 3 or 4 of them I can look at,
We can do that. We can certainly get them out even
as soon
prior
as
to
you get them
the,
ready, I'm ready to look at them.
yeah, even prior to the agenda packet.
Yeah.
Send them out as we get them
I'm
ready.
good with that.
Sure. So for the February meeting, we're gonna bring up Article 1, if there's any additional changes y'all wanna make to Article 1, and we'll go ahead and take a look at Article 2. If that's all right, unless y'all wanna.
No, I think
also-
so. Article 2 looks really short.
Article 2 is relatively short.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think there's something to be said for, even if it's not a long section of the UDO, really digging into all the details.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know, really thinking
Yeah.
about the language of the ordinance
Mhm.
and like with 1.8, for example, the procedure of planning board consideration and then commissioner consideration and how the document is amended. You know, nothing wrong with just really combing over it, the fine tooth comb.
And we should probably read it the way it is. Homework ahead of time before we
Sure.
present changes, just kind of expedite the process.
Yeah,
The whole
it can be-
document's 195 pages. I would like to think we could get to it in a year.
It
But
can-
I've not established one like this before, so.
Yeah,
or
yeah, it can be
changed
tough to
something like that
read with the underlining and the strike through. You know, you just kind of get used to seeing it and taking that out in your mind and then seeing what it says currently versus what it would be proposed to be. Well, great. Well, I will prepare Article 2 for the next meeting then.
All right. Everybody clear on this part of it?
Yes,
All
sir.
right, good. So moving down to the subcommittee update. We've lost one of our members. So first thing we need to do is replace the member.
Well, that subcommittee wasn't allowed to have outside members on the subcommittee.
It is.
So could the subcommittee still remain the same?
Well, not
Just a
really.
question. you know.
It could. Go ahead.
The answer to your question is yes.
Mhm.
But when I said we need to replace our member, that wasn't a question.
Understood.
We need to replace our member that we
Okay.
lost.
Mr. Chair. You know, realizing what was going on with Sandy from, you know, the previous commissioner meeting. Being that we have nice new board member. I recommend Henry Vines. To that committee.
So we got a nomination and a second to replace Sandy on the subcommittee.
So do we need to explain, Mr. Ryan, what this is? Do you know what
Do-
nominated?
Does he understand what a railroad is?
We just moved real quick. there.
That clacking noise you hear is a train coming down the track. You'll be able to hear the bell ringing here in a minute.
Welcome.
So Henry, you gonna be on the subcommittee?
Yeah.
Well, why are you agreeing to stuff? Sandy actually had two roles with us. One was on this subcommittee and the other was the alternate member to the technical review committee. So this is a package deal. You in for both? Okay. So we've got a nomination and a second for Mr. Henry to replace Sandy. Good luck with that.
I ain't replacing nobody. It's hard to replace people, I think.
So I know it's a motion on the floor. I ask after the motion. But I had a question whenever we get to the discussion part.
Okay, well, we got a motion and a second, so now it's time for discussion.
So do we have, I guess, an update from the rest of the members? Or did they not meet since
Well-
that discussion?
When the brakes got put on what was going on, we stopped our work.
So I guess the committee as a whole is, I can't remember who it was now. It's, now it's Henry or will be. Was it yourself?
Mhm.
Rodney and Bone.
Rodney and Ball. Okay,
Mhm.
good. All right, perfect.
Mhm.
Good deal.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I got a little something to add. So, at the conclusion of the last subcommittee meeting, I'm trying to recall when that was. I want to say early December, maybe.
Mhm.
The subcommittee members had asked that I look into a couple of items. Item number one was whether or not there was any sort of consideration for creating a new drinking water source within Alamance County. And then item number two is to try to get some data on lot size creation between, I believe, 2013 and 2018.
That's correct. I was
Is that
reading
right?
this right here.
So on item number one, I reached out to North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, had a conversation there with somebody in there. I don't even remember the subdivision, the water quality division or whatever the case may be. They were not aware of any engineered studies, plans, old plans on the shelf, nothing at all about creating a new drinking water source within the county. So that appears to be a total non-issue. On item number two, in talking with environmental health and IT, they did not think that they could get data from nearly 10 years ago to 5 years ago on lot sizes. But my trusty assistant here, Ian Shannon, our planner two, has been compiling data on lot creation since September of last year. So in total, Ian, help me with the numbers here. I think we've had 57 or 58 new lots
You
created.
got it. I've got the email right there.
You got the email, and I
57.
even had emailed this out. So 57, and then of that, about 35 were less than 1 acre.
38.
38. The vast majority of those came with the approval of phase two of the landing at Summer Haven, which is just south of Mebane and has public water.
That's
Public
what
water.
time frame? 57 lots since when?
Since September of last year. So 3 months now.
But 38 of them are in Mebane.
But 38 of them are within the ETJ.
They're not in the ETJ, they're in the unincorporated area of the county, but they're close enough that they are on Mevin's drinking water, or they're the Alamance Orange.
Wassa.
public
The
water.
Wassa.
No, Alamance Orange. Isn't it Alamance Orange?
Do I have that correct, Alamance?
Because
Still-
Wassa,
That's orange
Alamance
water.
water,
That's
sewer.
Orange
orange water.
Elements.
That's two different entities.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
Wassa's Chowville Carborough.
Okay.
Alamance Orange Water is the.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still learning all my
Acronyms.
agencies and terminology.
Yeah. Well, for a
Yeah,
long,
they're on public
hey,
water.
I was thinking they were the same thing.
They're on public water. So that's just kind of the follow-up on those two requests regarding the data and the water source, but that's been about it. So I'm certainly open. If the subcommittee members want to meet again before February, obviously that probably needs to happen if there's gonna be some sort of report submitted for February, but that's all I've got on it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now we've got a motion on the floor in a second to put Henry Vines on the subcommittee and TRC. All in favor, aye? Opposed? Okay. So with this, we're gonna move our report till March so that we've still got a generic month and a half to get the stuff together as opposed to being in February.
Okay.
Since we lost that time kind of in limbo. In reference to the minutes from our special meeting in November on the 30th, I am not planning to make a motion tonight about sending the commissioners a letter. I'm changing my mind. So I sent out a draft for, I think everybody got a copy of it to look at and mark it up. If you got it tonight, it's marked up. I'm happy to take it back and read over it. If you don't worry about it, but I'm not gonna, we got much more stuff to deal with, and so I'm just gonna leave that alone. As a point of homework, just for clarification, so everybody knows, when you take a vote on something, and you help me here if I'm wrong, what I'm getting ready to say. You have a motion and a second, you have discussion, and you have a vote, and everybody's in favor of it, and you're gonna have at least two, because if you make a motion or second it, you have to vote for it. So if you vote for it, then that's an affirmative vote. and they ask for opposed or opposition or whatever, and if nobody says no, then all votes are recorded as unanimous.
Correct.
In some cases, I have heard people say, I move the vote be recorded as unanimous, which is a little redundant, because if in fact there is no opposition to it, then it's acknowledged as unanimous. And I just say that so that everybody's on the same page. Sometimes stuff comes up and you really don't think too much of it, and you don't vote for it, or you don't think too much of it, but you don't think enough against it to vote against it. So you just say nothing, but it's still acknowledged in the records as a unanimous vote, unless somebody does. Yes, sir.
Point of, you said that the person that made the motion the second had to vote for it. I don't think that is in fact the case.
I don't know that it's required that you vote in the affirmative, but it's rare that a person wouldn't and without changing
Okay.
their motion or withdrawing a second.
If you make a motion or if you second a motion, you cannot vote against the motion.
Correct.
Is that a correct statement?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So that you can't vote against it, it's recorded. Okay,
As an affirmative vote.
yeah,
Right.
so I just shared that for clarity, just so everybody kind of,
I do know this happened in the commissioner's meeting. This is the reason I was clarifying. One made the motion and then voted against the motion.
they follow a different set of rules.
Okay.
I'm not aware of that having happened since I've been here, but I think really what I would suggest in any instance where there's any kind of ambiguity as to who voted for what, I would suggest that someone call for a roll call vote.
Yeah.
And members vote by their roll, so that way it's clear who voted for what.
Right, yeah, and hopefully we don't get to the point where we have to go to calling names and doing things like that right there. But that's just a little bit of housekeeping. The other thing that I want to wrap up with here right quick, a couple of 3 meetings back, Mr. Morgan's daddy rightly stood at this podium and told us that growth was coming to Alamance County. And there wasn't nothing we could do to stop it. These are right, correct words. However, growth is a whole lot like water. It's going to take the path of least resistance. And since Alamance County is on track with wanting to be like our neighbors, they've all got stuff in place to make development more difficult, which makes Alamance County the path of least resistance. So I just share this as food for thought. If we want to find ourselves run over, we can sit around here and do nothing. Or if we want to have a little bit of say in what's going on and maybe manage it on some level, now's the time. And that's all I've got. Anybody else got anything they want to add?
Well, I know, I've heard grumblings around communities from different folks that maybe what happened in 2022 when we were over at the historic was maybe premature to just throw it out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Other discussions that we had on the table.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're attacking 6.9 subdivision ordinance, right? But there are obviously other things that a UDO, when we discussed this before, came out of number 5, the small area plan for snow camp. And there was concerns about one part of the county that maybe it should be through all of the county because it was going to be, again, one part of the county at least resistance in another township. All right. So I've heard grumblings from people that were previously and never going to get the Z word here. That maybe that might be, something that needs to at least be in the discussions, especially as we're attacking the UDO when we get to 6. That we really need to come to Jesus with this path of least resistance.
I agree. I think there's been a lot of beating around the bush, so to speak, of zoning, countywide zoning. I think that needs to be on the table for discussion. I think that's a very appropriate tool to set in place things about what you like and what you don't like countywide, and not picking on one township or one portion of the county versus the other. And for better or worse, there's going to be some people who don't understand what zoning can do for them, because they always think zoning as the big man telling you what you can't do with what you own. And I understand. So I don't know why it needs to be so taboo. This countywide zoning needs to be considered, in my opinion.
Agreed. And that's why I thought about that we even have a section for snow camp. I don't think that's should even be there. I mean, 'cause that's kind of isolating one area of the county. For whatever reason, was the thought process behind putting it there. I don't think there should be any township that should be identified separately from the rest of the county. And this would be a great opportunity to do that if we look at, countywide land use.
And I will say, as we look at it, try to strike a balance to where it protects both sides on the issue, and not just be a straight up copy and paste document from some other neighboring township.
Correct.
Because that's a problem.
Absolutely. Because that's the problem we ran into the last time.
Last few times.
Y'all know where I stand. We need to plan what our community's gonna look like.
And I think there's been enough lessons learned. I think that's when I started on the board, I think my first meeting had 100 people. I thought they were there to see me, but they weren't. I think
They did.
They
They came to see you,
But I think we had a lot of lessons learned that everybody can kind of draw back from, and kind of a new path forward on how we can probably better approach it in a systematic way, including a new planning director, for that matter, and attorney for that matter. That we can probably make a more concerted effort to get the education widespread and kind of start attacking the elephant in the room at the end of the day.
I think everybody in this room knows where I'm at. I stood in front of the commissioners, and I served with Lee on that advisory committee. I pleaded with all of them. I pleaded with people I know. Snow camp was really being hurt, but I said, if we didn't face this thing as a countywide zone, then it would never happen. Because somebody's gonna be mad because you're telling me what I can do, but you're letting this over here do what they want to keep on doing. And it was, I think it was a mistake that we ever split it up. I think we had people on the board that was really committed to looking at something. But the one thing that's always rears its ugly head is the cost, But the cost is there, regardless of what you do it in the section. It's going to be cheaper, when you do it, to do it all at one time. And back to what you were saying, Rodney, about, what we need to do. I think that one approach that we need to look at, other than just, making it hard, is we look at it in a way that what is best for the citizens, and how can we make these ordinances and put them in place that's going to help preserve and protect the citizens. I can tell you, running my neighborhood, they're everywhere. And I rode through one just the other day just to see. It's right across from what was Sizemore, it's New South now. And there's like 15 houses in the road that they built a road in there. And what's so disturbing, if you look at this thing, there's 14 rocks down through there. And when I say rocks, I'm talking about whales. And every one of them's in a straight line. So what's going to happen to those folks when they pull all the water out there and they're sitting there with no water? I think really we want to preserve our county, and this is a way we can, there's a way we can do it, in land size and. But I think also when we look at this and approach this, we need to approach it in a way that's, in the best safety and well-being of the citizens of the county. I really think that we would go further that way than just saying, oh, well, we just want to make it harder on the contractors or the subdivisions. That's just my thought.
So it sounds like Article 5 might take a while after all.
It may look a lot different.
It might.
So Article 5, the snow camp small area plan was a brainchild of Amy Kaler, our senator from the Bay County. And it was to address the snow camp area based on a surprise visit from Alamance Average, Boggs Paving, and the snow camp board. All right. So the idea, if you go through the situation, snow camp was supposed to be the guinea pig with other townships to follow. Now, at the time too, they put $60,000 because that was going to be the cheapest way to go to do a smaller plan. I think, I can't remember the cost, 120, 200,000 to do the whole county.
Wow.
I think that is what they came up with. Okay, so they voted to spend $60,000 on the snow camp, small snow camp area as the guinea pig, the test area. So that's a little bit of the history, okay?
Right.
Yes, Jake and Tanya probably go a little bit too far, maybe with cookie cutter ordinances from other counties or whatever. But that's what planning people do, right? I mean, that's your education, right? Okay, so that's kind of where that came from. But there was a lot of pushback just in that one area. A lot of pushback. Yeah, a lot. But I think even those understanding or some of the negativity had come back from before. Some of those folks that were on the con side are now thinking about moving on to the pro side. So I think it's gaining more steam. It's going to have to. People are realizing what's going on. So, yeah, number 5, when we get to that point, we can rename number 5 and whatever. But that's probably where it's going.
Well,
That's reality, right?
if you want to take it on as a project, you can go back about 15 or 18 years and go through the minutes of these meetings. And I sat in this very room, this very table, and said, if we'll wait long enough, we'll have zoning in Alamance County. And of course, I had to dodge tomatoes when I said it. And when I come on this board in 2005, I came on it with the understanding that zoning is a bad word. Because I ain't gonna have somebody telling me what I can and can't do where I pay the taxes. And I have learned over these past years that there's only one thing worse than zoning. Anybody want to take a guess what it is?
Not zoning.
No zoning. That's right, just like America, the worst country in the world, except for all the others. So there's your perspective on it. And here is some other information that we learned with this snow camp looking into. There's not gonna come a time when Alamance County, this planning board, the planning department, the inspection department, the legal department, the county commissioners can say no. That time's not gonna come. Now, you can move it around, you can make it take longer, you can make it cost more. But if the right pocketbook decides that they want to do whatever, there's a guy campaigning for governor right now, and he said, if I'm elected governor, we ain't gonna sell no land in North Carolina to foreign countries. Well, you know what? I kind of like what he says, but I'm not 100% sure how he's gonna back it up. Cause the foreign country's not gonna come in here and walk in as China and say, Bill, I want to buy your house. China's gonna go to somebody and have them come buy your house. You gonna sell it to your neighbor 3 doors down with China's money. You might know something about that, kind of close to home.
I do.
Wasn't out of China, but it was the same concept.
Yes.
Okay, well, if you can do that,
From Ukraine, I'll tell you exactly where it's from.
well, you know, when you get to the point where you don't know who you're dealing with and you're not sure who you can and can't trust, now the problems are just okay. I'm done.
Mr. Chair,
All
if
the
I might-
counties around us have zoning besides us. We're sort of in the center here and everything that touches us does. Is that
Essentially,
basically?
yes.
Yeah, 5 counties in the whole state. Somebody that or 10 counties in the whole
There's
state.
probably less than 10 that still
Yeah.
don't have
Caswell is partial zoning.
partial zoning, yeah.
Okay. So when
Chatham
we
was
say
for a long time,
Caswell
right?
got
Till
full
2016,
zoning, that's
I
not
believe,
right. Stay.
They're mostly the far eastern counties, far western counties
Don't have it. Correct.
that don't have it.
Mhm.
And there's one rectangular county right in the dead center of the state, shining like a bright white.
Which one is it?
The map is color coded, so they're blue and red and then white. The white ones are not, have no zone, and the red ones are partial zoned, and the blue ones are zoned. And we are a big, looks like that piece of paper right there on the map. It's startling to look at and think about the people. And I mean this in all sincerity, the people in this county that have led this county and have been the leaders of this county and have just looked at that and said, well, that's okay. That's good enough. When all around them, at least there's some form of planned growth. There's still growth there. It's just they've decided where they want people to live. They've decided where they want people to work. That's the map I'm referring to.
See a little white
Yeah.
rectangle there?
You know, and so, you know, that's the whole idea that they thought that was okay.
I don't think zoning has stopped any growth in Orange County,
Mm-mm.
Anywhere.
Wayne County, Durham County, because we're doing a hell of a lot of business over there.
Yeah, I mean, but it's put in places where it makes sense rather than just here, there, and helter skelter.
Whole lot of business.
Mr. Rodney, I stood right up here 25 years ago. Me and Red Davis came before the county commissioners, and it was over 25 years ago. And at that time, we were asking for zoning. And we wanted the county commissioner to consider zoning for agriculture. Because at that time, farmland was not exempt from zoning. And we asked the commissioners about zoning the county so that we could get agricultural land zoned,
Get it protected.
get it protected. And, I mean, they didn't throw nothing at me, but.
Well, the other part of this, Mr. Henry and I were both on the advisory committee for the extension department, extension service. And that came up in an advisory board meeting. We talked about things that were going on in the county. At the end of that year, neither of us were invited back to be on that committee anymore. It was just mysteriously, and then there was other people I know that've been on that committee for 20 years. But anyway, yeah,
Did you have a question?
I just wanted to offer one thing, but wait for this discussion to be done.
I'm
I wanted to go back to the legal question you had for me a moment ago, and I wanted to amend my answer. So the traditional belief has been that in a situation where a person makes a motion and subsequently seconded, those should be counted in the affirmative in the vote. However, the suggested rules from the UNC school government don't speak to that issue, and they say that any issue that is normally not addressed by the UNC rules should go to the Roberts order newly revised to change or to decide how that issue should be decided. And it says that a member has the right to change a vote on a motion until the result of the vote has been announced by the presiding officer. That says to me that any member can change a vote at any time before the announcement. So that would mean that the person who made the motion could decide to change the vote to the negative. So
Okay.
that's the kind of thing that really, I say that to say this, we ought to go ahead and figure out what the rules are. Maybe at the next meeting, I can bring a suggestion as to how we, the school government has published rules for small government boards. That's probably the suggestion as far as how we proceed, because that then refers to the rules of order if we have any questions about it. But those are the kind of things that change in terms of how these are revised over time. So I think if we were to encounter that situation in the future, I would suggest that if there's any question about whether or not the person who made the motion voted for it, we go back to the roll call vote like we said before. So thanks for bearing with me for the nerdy legal moment.
Well, that's fine. It is a strange somebody to make a motion. Let somebody else second it, discuss it, and then vote against our own motion.
I agree.
It just seems really,
Unlikely,
There are
but not
times where
impossible.
you hear other people have discussion and you might
Here's the
rethink your
discussion,
thought,
yeah.
and that discussion may lead you to a new thought.
Well,
And
here,
then you
but
withdraw your
You
motion.
should withdraw
What
your
typically
motion.
That's
happens
exactly
is you
right.
withdraw or.
we've already got years and years of precedent when say, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, President, Moderator, I rescind my motion.
Right.
Yeah, now that right there is voting against your own motion. But the body, you know, if you're gonna run it up the flagpole, somebody else got to make a motion.
Yes,
So-
so possible but unlikely is how I leave that.
Okay.
I move to adjourn.
You
Got
can.
one
You
question
may.
Before
I
we
move to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Whoa, we ain't got
You have to vote for it.
Not yet.
I've got a motion. I would just send my motion.
Well, it hadn't been second.
Yeah.
Whenever, you can go first, we'll have a chair.
Yeah, I got a question, from the county commissioners. We have a little bit liaison, Paisley, been out quite a while. Is there an update on him, or what's the situation? I mean, we hasn't been to a meeting in quite a while. Does anybody know what?
I know you had
Is he gonna-
surgeries too.
liaison?
Health issues.
Do we need a liaison? Well, I'm sure we want a liaison. That helps us gauge on at least, you know, somebody taking it
Sure.
in discussion.
Those are all really good questions. I don't have a good answer for you. I know that he is planning to be at the meeting next Tuesday. I expect to see him there. I have not seen him around the county building as much as I routinely have in the last few weeks, but I'm not sure why.
And that's something that's.
I think he's had a couple of health issues over the winter. I think he's recovering from those and is planning to resume his normal duties. I would expect to see him back. If we get to a point where we feel like we need that liaison and he's not able to do that, we can have that discussion, but I would imagine he'll be back.
The chairman.
And they serve as liaisons to all advisory boards in the county.
Right.
You have.
I just had one quick thing. Now that I know we had a lot of discussion about the number of planning board members at the last meeting. Now that it's official that we have 9, wanted to kind of revisit the bylaws for the planning board because it had language in it about townships and numbers. And if there were any suggested amendments to that, if you wanted to bring it to us or whatever.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Something I was gonna mention under the some discussion is it might also be worth it to take a look at a couple of items in the bylaws. So for example, the membership of 13 versus 9. There's something else in there too that I can't recall at the moment, but just relatively minor tweaks, primarily just the membership roster. Just to take a look at the bylaws and make sure they still make sense for the current construction of the board.
And the commissioners are working on the ordinance. Also, isn't that correct?
What ordinance?
The planning board ordinance.
The planning board ordinance was repealed by the UDO. So the guidelines of the construction and operations of the planning board are either in Article 2 or Article 3 of the UDO.
Okay.
Just a couple of other brief announcements, sorry. And these will be brief, I promise. I am absolutely thrilled that everybody's here tonight, all 9 of you. And I'm gonna request that you make sure you come to the February meeting as well. Not because there's anything special that you're gonna miss in Article 2, but
You
state
gonna
law
have pizza
requires.
for 'em.
What's that?
You gonna have pizza for everybody.
I might have pizza. State law requires that at the beginning of your terms, you take an oath of office before you technically commence with any duties. Oversight on my part that it's not on the agenda tonight, but we'll have to get a clerk or a judge or somebody official to administer those oaths, and it's gonna be a lot faster if you can all just do it at the same time. So we'll just make sure that we'll make sure that's on the February agenda.
That's February 8th, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Um,
first falls on a Thursday, unfortunately.
February 8th, that's right.
He won't be here.
I'll be in San Diego.
Okay, I think unless there's some sort of
First one
legal
I've missed
issue
already.
with it,
7 o'clock.
unless there's some sort of legal issue with it, we could just probably arrange for you to go visit the clerk's office and
Absolutely.
have it administered individually.
Yeah, you can stop by anytime after that date. Just do it in person. Yep.
Okay. I also want to introduce to you, our new planner technician, Janet Marino, who's in attendance tonight. She has officially been on the job 1 month today, and we're happy to have her. She helps me with a lot of things. She's great.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome.
But that's all I've got for announcements and discussion.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you bye.
Oh, congratulations, sir.
Yes, congratulations.
This is a congratulatory offense.
Congratulations.